This video will support you in producing high-quality flow diagrams using the web app diagrams.net. You'll be wanting to access the site using your browser, and when you arrive and click the Start Now top right, you'll be invited to confirm where you want your diagrams to be saved. The best option for NKS students is to select OneDrive, as you have an Office 365 account already. Simply click Authorize and your account will be logged in. You can then select Create New Diagram, and you'll be wanting to give your diagram a file name at the top. It's critically important not to remove the .drawio extension from the end of the file name. If you do, you'll find it very difficult to find the diagrams later on when you load them from OneDrive. So just change the front part of the file name. Final thing is to confirm where in your OneDrive you're happy for your file to be saved. Click the Yes option if you're okay with it being saved into the first root folder. Once this is done, your diagram will be saved frequently automatically. It's worth selecting File and Save occasionally just to make sure. Diagrams.net has an Object panel down the left-hand side and a Properties panel on the right. So with the background selected, we can do things like turn the grid on and off. So let's get some flowchart symbols drawn. The first symbol to draw is the start, end, terminator symbols. You can use the symbols in the general section at the top, and that's my preference for most symbols, but there's a flowchart section at the bottom. And I use this for the terminator symbol because I think it looks better than just using an ellipse, a squash circle. Once you drag your symbol over onto the grid, you can resize it using the handles around the edge and double-click the shape to add text. Once the object exists, notice the Properties panel on the right has loads of different options. The Text panel, for example, allows you to select bold for the text. Right-clicking on a symbol gives you further options, and one of the most useful is Duplicate, which does a copy-paste together all in one. So here I can make a copy of the start symbol. I'll be needing an end symbol for the flowchart later, so let's adjust this and save it for later. Now for a process. Something the program will do on its own without any input or output, and we use a rectangle symbol for this. Now by default these symbols are a bit tall and also have a bit of a narrow border, which I want to be boosting up to 2 from the panel on the right, so it matches the start end symbol. I'm going to add a command in this symbol and adjust the text with bold once again. Now I want another of these process symbols next, so back to the duplicate option, and this means I don't have to reset the settings for that object again. Moving the symbols left and right, you'll notice, allows you to line the symbols up. This will be really important later. I can add text to this describing the operation. Now I think to more evenly space these 3 symbols, the bottom 2 need to be shifted up a bit. You can group select a set of symbols by dragging a selection around the objects. Everything inside that selection will be selected, and I can carefully shift the items up, taking care to make sure they're also lined up horizontally. Right, in the mystery flowchart I'm building, I now need a decision, which will let me decide when the code will have had enough and stop. So we need a diamond symbol for this. Once again, I'll push the border width up to 2, and I personally think the diamonds are a little bit small by default, so I'm just going to resize it a bit and drag it to the correct position below my existing symbols. I add the condition to the symbol, and this is a question that has a true or false answer. That will do nicely. Now I'm going to do an output instruction using the parallelogram symbol, border adjustment and text to describe the output. Next will be an input, so that's the same symbol, so I can use duplicate again. And this will be an input instruction allowing the user to type in a number. Finally in this sequence, I want a couple of processes, so I'm going to duplicate one of the rectangles from above. Now for this instruction, I want to add the new number that's just been input to the total. So I need to use total plus number, of course, but I want the result to go back into total. We're essentially increasing total by the new input number and then assigning it back into the total. Great. Another duplicate, and this time to increase the counter by 1. Adding 1 to the counter and then assigning the value back into counter. You'll see a lot of instructions like this in your programming experience. Now, only one symbol left, which will be an output instruction to finish off the program, outputting the value of total. This needs to go to the right of the decision symbol. Changing the output text is needed to ensure it outputs a suitable result. Now the main symbols are in place. I can work out where I want the end symbol to go. Down at the bottom right is ideal. Now it's vital that all the symbols are nicely lined up for the next bit, which is adding all the flow arrows. When you hover over a symbol, you'll see a number of blue crosses appear. These are tether points to connect arrows between symbols. When you hover over a cross, it glows green, and you can then click and drag an arrow to the next symbol. If you land where you're glowing green, it will attach the arrow. I can keep doing this all the way down the flowchart. It's important to realise that symbols are only allowed to have one exit arrow. You must always know which way you must go from a symbol. The only exception to this is decision diamonds. They must have two onward arrows, one for the condition being true and the other if the condition is false. In this case, the no branch will go to the right and the yes branch will flow downwards. You can type the yes and no or true false directly onto the arrow by typing while it's selected. At the bottom of this sequence, I want it to loop all the way back to the decision so it can be considered again. I can drag an arrow upwards, but notice the arrow now hugs the symbols a little bit too close. The blue handles can be used to give it a bit more space. Now I think the arrow below the decision is a little bit too small, so the symbols need a little bit of adjustment. So I'm going to quickly select the symbols below the decision, shift them down a bit, and then just redraw the arrow. That's much better. The last flow arrow, and we're done. You can then finish off your chart with a little bit of colour. One classy approach is to colour the same symbols a key colour, which helps to see the different symbols more clearly. The grid off option is useful for taking screenshots, and you can do a screen snip with the usual Windows key, Shift and S combination, or using the snipping tool. Create your own copy of this flowchart and then follow the modify task to create a slightly different version of your own.